I have to be somewhere else right now, but I am recording this because it's been overdue so long. Like 2 हफ्ते पहले डालना चाहिए था मुझे ये वीडियो. Anyways, Q&A. Jumbo. What is the book about? The book is about poems. It's a poetry book basically, and it's about a journey for what I call the 3 affairs of love, that is the lovers, the remains, and the faith. So when you read the book, it's basically divided into the 3 sections for lover, remain, and faith. It touches about every subject, almost every subject between falling in love and finding yourself and everything in between. And because I do not want to spoil everything about it, and because you're waiting for the paperback, so I'll just stop what the book is about. How are your feelings about the whole book? Emotional, roller coaster, sensitive, and beautiful, unreal, and secrecy. You already know that I'm a little too emotionally attached with the title of the book, Half a Moon, and you know the story. And if you don't, it's in my last video, you can watch it. But yeah, of course, it was very emotional because obviously I had a life out of that book. Like while I'm not writing it, I have a life, but while I am writing it, I was writing it, I was in a whole different space, unreal and beautiful. Like it was just me and words and some stories in my head. I heard this quote that said, you never finish an art piece, you always abandon it. And that was what it felt like. Should I keep this poem? Should I? It was like kind of confusing. When do I stop writing? Like, this is the complete collection and everything. There is no more poem that needs to be added or subtracted or edited anywhere. So that was like abandoning something, and I did not want to do that. So I made a collection of poems that is labeled as poems that did not make it through, and I will never release them. I might release them like separately on my Instagram, but I won't put them in a book, not for now at least. Next question please. I feel like I'm a book interview, but like Sasta Vogue interview. Will there be a paperback edition? Yes. Yes, definitely. I am a paperback girly. There is a paperback, but it's like it's too messy right now, and I was supposed to get a proof copy yesterday, but I still haven't received it. So all the best with me being able to release the paperback version by the end of this month, but I'm really trying hard to get it out as soon as possible, but it will when the time is right. I don't know. So I cannot wait for you to read it actually and have my own published book in my own hands. Like, that's a dream. What was your I'm doing this moment? I'm doing this moment is that in January my poem was like, it went viral, and that's when it hit me like I should I thought it's just like, it's a joke, I'm gonna write a book. And I told my friends I'm gonna write a book, and they were like, good. Good for you. I opened a Word document and pasted all my poems in there. मतलब मेरे फ़ोन नोट्स ऐप में जितनी है या फिर मेरे डायरीज़ में जितनी लिखी हुई थी, मैंने सारी वहाँ पे लिख दी, सारी कॉपी पेस्ट कर दी, टाइप कर दी, whatever. And then it reached about like 100 pages, like Word document, 100-page Word document, and I was like, oh, this. I did not realize I was doing this until I was too much into it. What is your career? My career. I am still a student. I am a film student. That rhymed. I'm a film student and a freelance writer and a published author, which is kind of weird to say out loud. So, but I am a published author. Yee. I'll show you one more thing. I have it on my Notion. Ruko, I'll show you. And this is my yearly intentions, and you see, this is published my poetry book, Half a Moon. The moment I just crossed it out from my list was like, how do I get inspiration? I am alive and I exist, so I got my experiences from life, and that's what I write about. Like, yeah, they're not all stories or poems about me or from my own life experiences. I try to word them and try to tell you a story. So, and if you ever ask me for writing advices, I would just say, write what you feel is. For me, poetry is something that makes you cry, and it just makes you feel something. You just feel, and that's what you write. So this is me recording the book recommendations for the second time because my camera decided not to record it. So these are the books that I'm going to recommend. I know these are just 4. I'm not going to recommend you only 4 books as a matter of fact. So I have some other books that I read on Kindle, so I'll be recommending them, and I'll be recommending some books that I lost. Starting with this one. Okay, starting with this one. Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Before the Coffee Gets Cold is a soft fantasy, and I love soft fantasies, seriously. And this is the book that made me feel like I should read more Japanese books. They're beautiful, seriously. So this is the book about a cafe, a magical cafe, where you can go back in time, but there are a bunch of rules that you have to follow, and if you break them, there are consequences. So it's beautiful, and it's a 4-book series. Out of which I just have 2. Before the Coffee Gets Cold and Before Your Memory Fades. This is the first book. This is the 3rd book. I did not know. I should have bought the 2nd book, and the 4th book. I do not have them. So the next book I'm going to recommend you is my most beloved book. It's called Anxious People by Frederick Backman. I mean, this man, he has a way of writing, and that is beautiful. And if I could be anyone with a good storytelling, this is the man I want to be. Frederick Backman and Anxious People. Anxious People is about a group of strangers who went for this apartment viewing, and they're all strangers, and it's about how a robbery turned into a hostage drama. The way this book brings all the stories together at one point is so beautiful. I mean, it makes you think about stories of people. Like I say, there are so many stories around the world. I mean, everyone has their own story, but this book makes you think that, actually feel it, because all the 8-9 characters who are at this apartment viewing turns out are connected through some or the other event, or emotional journeys, or just existence. And it's beautifully written, the way he weaves the story. The next book is The Picture of Dorian Gray. So I recommended you a soft fantasy, a drama, and now I recommend you a dark philosophy, which is also a soft fantasy. book. So The Picture of Dorian Gray is it's a classic, and it's the only novel written by Oscar Wilde. The book is about a man called Dorian Gray who gets his portrait made by one of his friends, and it turns out the portrait takes a form of his sins. I would say it's a dark book because it talks about the human nature in a very, very different perspective, and it's beautiful and dark at the same time. So coming to my next suggestion or book recommendation, we have Frederick Backman again, is A Man Called Love. And it's basically about this 59-year-old guy who is very grumpy but had a sweet spot for his wife, Sonja. So if you like grumpy and sunshine, that's the book. I mean, let me correct the statement. If you like grumpy and sunshine with soft old school romance, this is the book. And I specify old school romance with slow paced storytelling. It's very slow paced, but it's beautiful. It's getting kind of dark, isn't it? Isn't it? Okay, next book recommendation is another soft fantasy, and it is You've Reached Sam. So what this book is about, this is the girlfriend, this is the boyfriend, he dies, she is in pain, she calls him and he picks up. How did he pick up? How did a dead person pick up a call? We don't know. Let's read the book. Why I love this book? Alright, where did it go? Okay, no? Yes. It's written. It reminds me of O. Can you see here? It reminds me of O. And yes, who is O? A Man Called Love. Yes, that O. And do I love O? Yes. I'll just give you something from this book. I'll read out a little something. Write about his death, about what happened, about what it meant to lose him. But that's not something I want to focus on, because I don't want to remember Sam as a tragedy. I do not want that to be his story. When people think about Sam, I want them to think of his best moments. I want them to remember him as a musician, staying up late on a school night, writing music on his guitar. I want them to know him as an older brother, building giant forts in his room. And I want them to remember us and the last 3 years we spent together, how we met, our first kiss, all the reasons I fell in love with him. I want them to fall in love with Sam too. Maybe that's what I'll do. Write down the memories of him, memories of us, tell our story. The para I just read, it was a random para I chose, and this is a good transition to the next recommendation because it's about a similar subject. It's about death, and it's called The Song of Achilles. You've seen this book float around the Bookstagram and Book Talk a lot, but why? Because it's a Greek mythology narration from a different perspective, and Patroclus and instead of Achilles. So that's apparently a rare thing. This is the only Greek mythology book that I've ever read. So no idea about the other books, but it is said that this is a new perspective of writing for this story. So that is one thing, and the second is this quote. Near the end of this book, when they both are dead, Achilles' mother comes and she meets Patroclus waiting to be taken to the other side of the world, and that's when he tells her that how he wants Achilles to be remembered by people and by his mother. And it's when I was reading this right now, that's what I was thinking. There was a scene about this in that book. And it's beautiful to think about death that way. How I want to remember you is not a tragedy, but our memories of love. It's beautiful. Now coming to the books I read on Kindle and others. The next recommendation is The Deeper Wound by Deepak Chopra. My father has wanted me to read Deepak Chopra for so long. I have one from his shelf and it's called The Deeper Wound. It's nice. It's mind changing, and it actually brings out a different perspective about death again. And it's one of the few self-help books that I actually liked. The next book on the list is The Convenience Store Woman. Oh boy, this book. I read that in like 2 hours, like at a high speed. I was shocked. I read that so fast. Although people say it's comedy, I did not laugh at all. But then why is this book on the list? Because I loved it. It's about this woman who everyone thinks is very weird, and in a way she would be, and that is only depending upon your definition of normal and then what is normal. It's about this woman who works at this convenience store and how things happen and the consequences of those things try to take away her identity, and how she realizes her identity as a convenience store salesperson. It's kind of depressing, but at the same time it's beautiful and weird, and I loved it. That's why I finished it in 2 hours. And interesting. The last book that I want to recommend you, and the first one you should read, is Half a Moon, Remains of a Lover, and it's by me. I'm sorry, I had to. You can, oh, by the way, you can get it for free on Kindle Unlimited. Now let me show you something from my book, just in case you're curious of what I'm recommending you. I'm one for long conversations, sitting at the shore, greeting the birds as they fly back home, yearning for a place to call mine, a home to return to. When all we know is conversation, there is a conversation in my head I ignored. You can choose yourself. After all this time, every time, a conversation that calls the curve of my smile not crooked, but a smile. A conversation that calls my powers back. One that would choose me every time. So this time, I'll sit by the sea to hear the waves for a conversation with my heart. I am going to shut this off and edit this 1 hour long video and make it 10 minutes long, because it's a Q&A and book recommendation, so it will be around 10 to 15 minutes long. So all the best with that, and all the best to editor Ayushi, and yeah, that's all for the video. I love you. Bye.